What's up, sports fans? Greg Rowe, Rowe Show Sports Talk. For those of you that don't know, there is a new series that premiered on Netflix called Untold. And what this series goes over and covers are stories, maybe backgrounds, some things you didn't know about famous athletes, famous teams, famous incidents in the history of sports. And it kind of gives a behind-the-scenes look on things that maybe happened behind the scenes. Interviews with, the athletes, the players, the teams, the managers, whatever, after the fact, to kind of get more of an in-depth and personal look and view on these certain athletes, teams, or events throughout sports history. The first one was on the Malice in the Palace, which was the famous brawl between the Pacers and the Pistons, the famous Ron Artest brawl where he went up in the stands and started swinging on fans, and, some fans came out, on the court and were throwing beers and chairs and trying to start fights. And it was just really a really bad look, not only for basketball, but for sports in general. It kind of gives you a different view, opinion on that whole, event itself and kind of the aftermath, which I thought was really cool. Recently, I saw that they were releasing one this past Friday the 20th. It's called Deal with the Devil, and it is on, personally, one of my favorite fighters of all time, and that's Christy Martin. For those of you that don't know, Christy Martin was really the first star, really the first big name female boxer in the history of boxing. She was the first one to really bring attention to the sport, that women could do this, women could fight and it be okay, and that they could do it at a high level with a lot of skill and a lot of heart and a lot of determination. She caught the eye of Don King. Don King signed her, which, was unfathomable at the time for a female to be signed to Don King Promotions. She ended up fighting on some of Mike Tyson's undercards, which again is just something that was absolutely unheard of. And not only did she fight on Tyson's undercard, but Tyson asked to have her fight on the undercard. That tells you what he thought of her and what kind of respect he had for Christy Martin. She was involved in the biggest fight in the history of women's boxing with Laila Ali. Still to this day, it's the biggest fight ever. They sold over 100,000 pay-per-views. They sold out. The arena chairs had to be added. It was a big deal. And this kind of goes over her, her beginnings, her kind of rise to becoming, who she was and becoming the fighter she was. But then it also goes over some of the personal things, some of the personal demons that she dealt with, an addiction to cocaine, being married to her trainer, Jim Martin, who was, 25 years her senior, and what that was like on her physically, mentally, emotionally. And then obviously goes into the climax that most of us know, and that was that he tried to kill Christy. Christy, wanted to leave him and didn't want to be with him anymore. And she had made up her mind that, she really liked women, and there was somebody from her high school that she had her eye on and had been communicating with, and wanted to be with that person instead of being with Jim. And, he told her, if you try and leave me, I'm going to kill you. And, she turned around and looked him dead in the eye and said, do what you have to do, and left. Like, when we see fighters, right, we see them for what they are in the ring, and it's warriors, it's blood, it's guts, it's sweat and tears, it's all these things. But this is really an in-depth and kind of more personal and emotional view of what it's like to be a fighter, and the things that fighters go through. And especially for, Christy Martin at the time, it wasn't as common or as accepted to come out of the closet, to be gay. It just wasn't. And what you see through this documentary is her struggle with that her whole life, and knowing she was gay, marrying her trainer because she felt like, hey, he gave me the opportunity. He helped me kind of get to where I'm at. And as she puts it, when I married him, I married boxing, right? It was kind of her way to say, hey, thank you for everything you've done, and just kind of keep that bond to, gym, to boxing, as one kind of dynamic piece. And, it has its moments where you're really angry. It has your moments when you're just like, holy shit, like Christy Martin is a badass, because she is. It has your moments where you feel really sad, you know, for her, not only for what happened to her, you know, at the hands of Jim, but also the struggle that she had to go through with not being able to just be who she was and love who she wanted, you know, not only with, you know, the public's acceptance, but her own family's acceptance of, you know, her choice of who she was and who she wanted to be with. So it pulls at all the emotional strings, you know, that you can have as a human being. Like I said, I like The Malice in the Palace. I thought this was 100 times better. This, to me, it's about an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes. To me, this is one of the best documentaries I've ever seen. Not sports documentaries, best documentaries I've ever seen. Because of how compelling her story is. Because of, you know, who she is and where she came from, like a 500 person town in West Virginia, to, you know, being the first female to be promoted by Don King, to be the first female to fight on a pay-per-view, to, you know, headline a card, to, you know, fight on a Mike Tyson undercard, to, you know, being on the cover of Sports Illustrated, to being on talk shows like, you know, The Tonight Show, you know, Jay Leno. I mean, you name it, you know, she did it. And she's a real true trailblazer also in that aspect for women's sports. You know, I know that when most people think about women's sports, they think soccer, basketball, maybe golf, those sort of things. They don't really think boxing, but Christy was really one of the first true trailblazers in women's sports, right? She was the first one to really break that barrier and kick it down and have, you know, women and the world take notice and say, hey, you know what? Women can do what men can do, and they can do it just as good and in some instances better, right? And I think that really helped, you know, catapult women's sports. You saw people, you know, women of all ages, girls, you know, old, young, getting into boxing because of Christy Martin. You know, her most famous fight, it was with Laila Ali. And Christy, I think she's about 5'4", 5'4.5". You know, she's a lightweight, you know, so that's not very heavy, right? And so Laila is, you know, 5'11", and she's, you know, fighting between 168 and 175 pounds. And Christy called her out and wanted to make the fight. And you could see the size disparity. You could, you know, it was basically a size thing, right? Laila beat her because Laila was younger, and Laila was just bigger, right? Christy is, in my opinion, was more skilled. Christy, in my opinion, is the most skilled woman's boxer I've ever seen. She could do it all. She could punch with both hands. She had devastating power. She had a granite chin. She had good footwork and defense and boxing ability if she wanted to use it. But, you know, her style was that of like a Mike Tyson, right? She wanted to go in there, throw punches with bad intentions, try and hurt you, try and get you out of there, try and be exciting, right? Because exciting is what sells. Exciting is what people want to see. And that's what, you know, kind of allowed her career to keep doing this, was because of her fighting style. And, you know, she ended up losing the fight to Laila, you know, took a knee in the fourth and just kind of got counted out. Was upset with her husband, who was her trainer, you know, and not, you know, stopping the fight, because, you know, that's what a fighter wants. A fighter doesn't want to, you know, go into a fight and be like, shit, I'm going to either have to die here or I'm going to have to be the one to pull myself out of this. You know, they're the ones putting their lives on the line. They're the ones, you know, taking all the risk. And so, you know, you expect your trainer to be like, okay, you know, they've had enough, you know, live to fight another day. You know, let me save you, so it looks like, hey, I chose to pull Christy out. Christy didn't quit. Christy didn't get stopped. And he didn't do that. And, you know, that never sat well with her. You know, Christy, like I said, had a granite chin. She used to spar with men and never get dropped. She never got, you know, knocked out. You know, obviously got counted out, took a knee against Laila. But Laila, even being, you know, a 5'11", 175-pound fighter, wasn't able to knock her out, wasn't able to, you know, drop her with one punch or anything. Christy had a granite chin. I mean, it's really amazing when you watch some of the fights and the punches that she took, and then you watch some of the sparring sessions with her fighting, you know, sparring with grown men and taking bombs, and she just keeps walking forward. It's unbelievable. She's always been my favorite female fighter. She's one of my favorite fighters of all time, simply for that fact. I mean, Mike Tyson is my favorite fighter of all time because he was that guy that had that intimidating factor. You know, he went in there, no nonsense, highly skilled, a lot of power, could knock you out with either hand, and he was just electric. He was exciting, right? A Tyson fight, there was a different dynamic. There was a different feeling around it. And that's the kind of feeling I got watching Christy fight as well. I knew that I was watching something that was different. You know, ended her career with 49 wins, you know, 7 losses. I was hoping to get that 50th win. You know, broke her hand in a fight that she was winning, and with 50 seconds left in the fight, the ring doctor stopped the fight, so she wasn't able to get that fight to get her 50th victory, which, you know, obviously in the grand scheme of things, and at least in her sporting career, sucks for her. I wish she would have been able to do that. But at that time, she was going through more important things, right? The court battles, the court hearings and proceedings against her husband, Jim, in which, you know, he was found guilty of, you know, second-degree attempted murder, and, you know, all that stuff, is serving, you know, 25 years in prison. Still, I believe, has about half of that sentence left to go. Maybe a little more, probably in that, you know, 14 to 15-year range, possibly. But it's just a really well-done documentary. Shows you, you know, a woman who basically had been through everything, right? Who had been through everything in her life. You know, she lived in a great, you know, coal miner's daughter, you know, small town. Family was, you know, religious, didn't really want her to be with women. She had to kind of hide it. Then, you know, to getting into a boxing career and doing all the trailblazing and everything that she did in her career, to, you know, the drug addiction, to, you know, being married to an abusive, sadistic asshole. And then sort of, you know, coming out the other side of that. Just shows you, like, what a true fighter she was, not, you know, just in the ring, but outside the ring. And that's why I have so much respect for her. Just how she handled her business. Like, she was a fighter. She wasn't looking to go in there and just be like, oh, yeah, if I can earn some money, whatever, like with my pretty face or whatever, or off my dad's last name. You know, she went in there, you know, blazed her own path based upon her own abilities, her own showings, you know, her own fighting style, and, you know, put women's boxing on the map. If it wasn't for her, there wouldn't be a Layla Ali. There wouldn't be, you know, a Frazier. There wouldn't be a Mia St. John. There wouldn't be a Lucia Riker. There, you know, there wouldn't be a Clarissa Shields. There wouldn't be a Ronda Rousey, you know, a Holly Holm, you know, an Amanda Nunes, Chris Cyborg. None of these girls, none of these women would be around in combat sports if it was not for Christy Martin. I mean, Layla Ali even says in the documentary, I didn't really get into boxing because my dad was a boxer. I got into boxing because I saw Christy Martin fight, and I was like, holy shit, I want to do that, right? And that just shows you the impact she has on the sport. I mean, she's the one that got Layla started. Layla's in this documentary being interviewed. Mike Tyson is in this documentary being interviewed, talking about her fighting style, how much respect he had for her. It's amazing. Christy Martin is boxing royalty, right? She's in the International Boxing Hall of Fame, as she should be. Should have been the first one in. But she's there. And, you know, she's enjoying her life now. She's married to, you know, one of her former opponents in the ring, which is, you know, a pretty cool story to just kind of bring things full circle. She has her own promotional company, Christy Martin Promotions. You can follow her, you know, on Twitter. You can follow her on, you know, Instagram, on Facebook, and kind of see the upcoming events she has, kind of keep in touch with what's going on with her life. But, you know, it was just a really well done documentary on somebody that I have a lot of, you know, love and respect for. And, you know, a few details and things that I didn't know going in. You know, as I said, I'm a huge boxing fan. You know, boxing is really the sport that I really, you know, got into. I learned how to box in Ron Lyle's gym, you know, in Denver, Colorado before he passed. You know, I've written for, you know, for Fight Hype, for, you know, Max Boxing, for Boxing Talk, you know, all these companies, published in Ring Magazine a couple times, covered, you know, a lot of fights, you know, live at ringside. So, you know, boxing's really that sport for me that, you know, is really the first thing I got into, started covering. You know, I had a boxing YouTube channel years ago. You know, kind of, you know, pulled all this stuff down because I wanted to go in a different direction of covering all sports. But, you know, it's really, you know, where my heart's at. You know, my dog, before I put him down, was named Pretty Boy Floyd. My new dog is called Champ, right? So, you know, I just have a lot of love and respect for boxing, and, you know, what these fighters go through, both, you know, physically, mentally, emotionally, you know, inside the ring, outside the ring, you know, what it's like to be in the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. You know, I don't think there's anything sadder, more depressing to me to watch in sports than a once great fighter kind of fighting at the end of their career and not really having what they used to have. And then it being like, okay, it's time. They're a shell of themselves. And, you know, it happens. It's basically happened to everybody, but like, you know, Calzaghe, Ward, and Mayweather, you know, really are the guys that really hasn't happened to. So, you know, it is what it is. But if you're in the mood to sit down for an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes and see a really good sports documentary and a really interesting person, a really interesting story and life, you know, check this out. Untold, Deal with the Devil, the Christy Martin story. It's fantastic. It's fabulous. I cannot recommend it enough. There are moments in this documentary that you will watch and you will be like, damn, this chick is bad. Like, she's tough. Like, she is the real deal. And it was awesome. Well done. And I was very happy to, you know, kind of see where Christy's journey has taken her and where she's at in her life. So that's it from me. Again, I highly suggest you watch it. It's on Netflix. It's a series called Untold. It's Deal with the Devil, the Christy Martin story. I think you'll thoroughly enjoy it if you're a sports fan. If you're looking for an interesting, you know, sort of story, if you like combat sports, then, you know, this is the documentary for you. So, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, thumbs up, thumbs down, that's okay as well. Subscribe to the channel if you want. Leave a comment in the section below. And until next time, I'm out of here.